So I'll start with the part one, basic intro to software. And I don't have my own documentation. I'll go with our IT solution documents that is created by our Kadirbai, and everyone will get access to that. So let's jump in. The first part is basic intro to software. The first question is, what is a software? We pretty much all know what is a software. We all have different software in our phones, in our computers and stuff. In general, software is a kind of program which used for operating computer and related devices. But in an organized manner, I would say software is a package code in an organized manner which operates hardware for a specific job. Under technical terms, software is also called as application, program, and system. And under business term, software is also called as projects and product. So like when a company is producing a software, instead of calling it an application or program, they would call it as project or product. The next question is, what is an application? An application is a program. So this is where a lot of you might have a question, like what the difference between software or an application? These are basically the same thing. Under technical term, we use different name, software, application, program, or system that runs in computer or similar devices. And application-wise, there are like several types of application, but mainly we see three different kinds of applications, which one of them is famous one is a desktop application. In desktop application, everything runs in one machine. Application runs in a single memory, front and back ends are in one place, and only one person can use it. For example, Microsoft Document. You on your computer in the Microsoft Office, you create a documentation. You only have the access to that. Nobody else has access to it. So that's a good example of desktop applications. Where the next question is, what is a client-server application? In client-server application runs in 2 or more machines. Application is more menu-driven, and limited numbers of users have access to that. So, and a good example would be MS Team. Let me give you an example. So that's our MS Team main group. You're probably not gonna have access to that unless someone have added to the group, or you have the invitation link to join the group. Outsider don't have access to that. So that is one good example for client-server based application. The next question is a web application. Web application, it runs in 2 or more machines. That is URL driven. Unlimited numbers of users have access to that. Anything that start with www, that is in web-based application. For example, we use Facebook, YouTube, these are web-based application, and a lot of people have access to that. We don't know the exact amount, but it could be millions and millions of people. And with web application, there comes with issues. Some of them are hardware compatibility issues, browser compatibility issues. With browser compatibility issues, let's say iOS has different version, Windows have different versions. Some of the program might be, or the web application might be good for iOS this version, but not the next version or the previous version. So that is something with the browser compatibility. And version compatibility is, let's say Google Chrome has, let's say 9.1 version on your computer, and you're accessing a website where you are able to access it. But when you update, like let's say the new version of the Chrome comes in, you update your application, that website you are accessing or the web application you are accessing might not be visible or not working properly. That is another version compatibility issue that comes with it. Security issue, we all know that hackers constantly try to hack into people's finances, banks and stuff. So that's where security issue comes in. Performance issue, this is where we mainly work. We meaning the QA. We do the performance test for any applications to see if that meets the requirement and if that is acceptable and application is working perfectly. That is this is where we do the performance test. Moving on to the next part. Do you guys have any question from part 1 or anything that I need to cover once again?
Hussein, one correction. Sorry for that. So scroll up just a bit, if you don't mind, just a bit. Okay, that's it. That's it. Okay, about web application issues. The performance is not what we work on. That's good. You identified performance is one area, functionality is another area. So there are two types of testers. One type of testers, they do functional testing. Functional testing meaning functionality of the application. Does that application works as expected? Performance meaning how fast, how slow that application is performing. So there are different type of testers. They do performance testing. They're specialists just to do performance testing. And in an industry, performance testers are very, very small in terms of size, meaning if the industry has 100 functional testers, they would only have one to two performance testers. So we don't really focus on performance testing much, but our main job would be functionality, to verify that application works was as per the requirement. Meaning you have an application that's supposed to have a login screen. So you and I need to verify that application, does it have a login screen? Yes. If so, does that login screen works when you enter your credentials? This type of thing is called a functionality or functional testing, and that's what we will be doing. So far, you have been doing an amazing job. I'm very impressed. Keep it up. But I just want to reiterate application issues. So, and you talked about three type of application: desktop application, client server application, web server application. So these are, everything is wonderful. And just to let you folks know, right now, everything is moving toward web application. Everybody wants to move away from local storage. No one wants to store anything locally now. Everybody wants to store on the cloud. So that's where the web application comes into the picture. And when you go to the web application, there are many issues. Like he talked about browser compatibility issues. If you build an application based on Chrome browser, it may or may not work in Edge or Safari or Firefox. So we as a tester, we need to test the application in each and every browsers to make sure it works same way in every single browser. So that's one thing we need to verify: browser compatibility, version compatibility. Each browser has different versions. If you if you go to any of the browser setting, you will see, if you go to the browser setting and click on about, it's going to tell you what is the current version. Now, next version or the last version may not have the same configuration. Your application may or may not work in each and every version. So depending on the requirement, depending on the client ask, you need to test your application in different browser versions. But usually, mostly, in most cases, we only test on the latest browser version. And now, these kind of issues are going away slowly. We used to have this kind of issues a lot, browser version compatibility issues. Now, whenever someone or the companies, let's say Chrome company, they are obviously Google, right? When they're updating their browser version, they do good enough job to make sure they're not breaking anything. We used to have a lot of issues with the browser compatibility, browser version compatibility, but nowadays, obviously, it's less and less. But again, when you're learning, you need to understand what it is and how to test it. Security issue, that's another one, right? You need to make sure your application is protected from the hackers. So you have to perform certain type of testing to make sure that your application is not breakable. So these are the things. Sorry, Sign, please carry on. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to.
Thank you so much, brother, for clarifying that for me. Anyone has any question from part 1? And so now, so I'll just move on to the part B, part 2, the basic intro to software testing. What is the software testing? It is a process of empirical technical investigation to ensure the correctness of the product. In another way, to meet the user requirement, to make sure does the software really work as expected? Does it meet the user requirement, or does the user like it, or is it working as the user expected? Here comes the question, what is a requirement? Apart from the last page, anybody has any idea what could be a requirement? So requirement is basically a wish list or a expectancy from the stakeholder, that what they want from a system or application to do, or how they should work. That is a requirement. And anytime, let's say we're an IT company, we're building softwares, someone comes into our company with their requirement, like, oh, this is my requirement, I want an application to be built and I want it to work in a certain way. I want this button to work that way. I want to have this button to take me to this place. This is where the requirement comes in. So what is a software quality? Software quality is bug-free, provide objective within, delivered on time and within budget, meet user requirement, and it's maintainable. So basically, we are doing quality checks to make sure the software doesn't have any bugs, and provide objective evidence. Delivered on time and within budget. That is the big thing, delivered on time and within the budget. So let's say you come to our company asking for us to build you a software, and we say, let's say within 2 months we can deliver you your product. But if for some reason we don't do it within the time, then we are accessing over the limit, and with that comes like more budget. So that is a big no-no, and obviously we don't want to face that and do that, and we have to make sure that meets our user requirement, how the client wants the application to be. We're not done just there. We also have to make sure it is maintainable, meaning that once we're done delivering the product, if the product is working perfectly, if there's anything wrong, or over time, if their apps or application is breaking up, we have to maintain our quality right there. The next question is, why do we test software? Basically the same thing, to provide confidence in the system, identify the area of weakness, establish the degree of quality to prove it is usable and operable. When do we test? That is a big question. It is an interview question. When do we test? As a QA engineer, we have several steps or phases where we test. Basically, the first ones, once the code is complete, once the developers are done coding, we start our test. During development, we do a test. Once the system delivery is complete, we do our test. As soon as the architect is defined, we start our test. And also as soon as the project is giving the go-ahead, we start our test. So this is one question that could come to our interview. Please focus on that. The next question is, what are the main purpose of software testing? There are three. critical point here: finding defects, verification, and validation. So defect is mainly when the requirement doesn't meet the application. There's something wrong, or the application doesn't work as it should. This is a defect, and defect is a variance between expected and actual result. Excuse me, guys, give me one quick second. And the verification process confirms the software meet the technical specifications. And validation process confirms that the software meets the business requirement. Please, for verification validation, bear with us. We are gonna go over the course. There's so many classes that we are gonna go over for verification and validation. We will have hands-on understanding of this process. For now, just understand that verification is the process to confirm that software meets the technical specifications, and validation process to confirm that the software meets the business requirement. What is a requirement? Again, going back to the requirement is what you want from a system and what the system should do. How we analyze the requirement. Analyzing the requirement is by reading and understanding the requirement. Every requirement has to be unique, meaning if one requirement is asking for one thing, it has to be clear, and we cannot have multiple requirements asking for the same thing. It has to be precise, clear, testable, consistent, complete, not ambiguous, bounded. When it comes to testable, it kind of related to complete and bounded. So to give you a best example, let me show you one thing. So let's say for this website, they have an option where you have your username, password, and login option. If I give you an example of a requirement, if the client comes to us and be like, I want a website where user can create their name, password, and then log into the website, it's not clear, meaning we don't know how many characters we could put into our username, if they require any special characters in it. Same goes for the password. What's the limit? Is there any boundary, like how many characters we can put in, if the special character is needed, and if the login button is working as well. So those are things that has to be clear, meaning testable, and has to be complete, bounded, and not ambiguous. Anytime throughout the process, let's say a requirement doesn't make sense, what should we do? That's when we reach out to our BA, business analysis, and ask them question. And a proper way to ask them question, like over the course, we probably have so many questions. Instead of just sending them one by one question, we can create a query log. We can write our question there, all the requirement-based question, and then send it to them. That's when BA comes in, they would explain things better to us. And that way we can understand our requirement better and be a good tester that way. Anybody have any question regarding part 2? Kadirba, you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I want to highlight a couple of things. So when it comes to requirement, we really need to, everything starts with the requirement. And I think Brother Sain talked a little bit about requirement. Requirement is like, I don't want to say that, but they say it in the industry, it's like a Bible. I don't want to compare this, right? But just understand it's a phrase. Don't take it any other way. So everything starts with the requirement. If the requirement is clear, if requirement is testable, if requirement is understood, then everything, the project is going to be smooth. But if you have ambiguity in the requirement, that's when things are going to be very messy. So as a tester, your first thing, right, when you get a requirement, and you get requirement in many forms. So depending on your company, what they use, Brother Siddiqui, we'll get to you in a second. Let me take a couple of minutes to explain this, because it's really, really important. Now, depending on your company, right, they could have requirement written in Microsoft Word. They could have requirement written in Jira. Jira is a tool. Some of you probably know, some of you probably don't know. So all you do, they could just write a ticket, and in the ticket itself is going to explain what they want us to build and test. And if that is not clear, when you get this, you read through it and see if it makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, you ask them, hey, what is this? Give me more details, give me more clarity, give me more information. So its requirement phase is so important. Once you get a requirement, you start analyzing, understanding, and making sure if the requirement is unique. Is it precise or clear? Is it testable? Is it consistent? Is it complete? Is it ambiguous? Is it bounded? And we will talk about all of this, right? Unique, why we need a unique requirement? We need a unique requirement to make sure that requirement is, you don't want to have two similar requirement. Then which one do you build, and how do you build two things, right? So things like that, your requirement must be unique. It has to be clear, very clear to understand. It has to be testable. And when we talk about testable, today, we will not spend time on what is testable and what is not testable. We will, I can give you an example, right? Let me give you an example. So for example, you have username and password field. And in a requirement, if you understand what is a requirement, and in a requirement, they could say, build a username and password field, and they don't say anything else. They just say, build a username and a password field. How do you test it? It's not testable. You cannot test it. They need to declare what are the values, what are the condition a username field should have, whether if it's if that field should allow only 10-digit or 8-digit or not, if what kind of characters that field should allow. Now if they say just build me a username, how do you test it? How many digits do you test it? What kind of characters do you test it with? Moving on to password field, right? Password field is more complex. Now, if they just say build a password field, how do you test it, right? It's crazy. Right now, it's too early to talk about it, but just to give you some idea. All right. Can you scroll up, brother, a little bit more? Okay. Software quality test. Scroll down a little bit if you don't mind. I saw something. Purpose, no. Okay, Brother Siddiqui, you had a question.
Can I watch the login field, like username and password? I have a question over there.
So,
Meaning
Yeah.
the example that I was giving you.
Yeah, there is a field username and password. We can use will they provide us the requirements, like what kind of language we can use there? Like we have Bangla letters, English letters, and other letters. So will it be provided what kind of language we may use over there, and how we're gonna test? Should we test all the language over there at the time of testing? And should we test all the numbers also? Can you just clarify that?
Sure,
yeah,
brother.
everything, can you, brother, can you go back to this application? Okay, so looking at this application, right, it doesn't make sense to ask what type of language. Sometimes you have to also use common sense, right? What you should not ask silly question, and that's just a learning purpose. I'm telling you, like whenever you are working in an industry, an actual field, you want to make sure that you don't sound silly, because you have people working there, experienced people, knowledgeable people. You also want to be among them, right? And everything will be defined in the requirement. What type of characters are allowed in the username field and the password field? How many digit? What are the combination must have? And whatnot, everything will be defined. And as you go through this course, you will learn about it more. But at the same time, you also want to make sure that you are showing smartness when you ask a question. But also, like being vocal is really, really good. Aggressive is really, really good in the field. They like that. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, when do you test?
Can
I want to
can
spend a couple of minutes here. Yes, sorry. Someone, Saeed, brother.
yes, can you please give example of the consistent?
Consistency. I don't want to get down to that right now. That's probably going to be it's going to be time consuming, but this is just a highlight, right? This is just a highlight of what's to come. And we will talk more about it down the line. Hang in there. Just understand when a requirement is given to you, you need to understand and analyze to make sure it makes sense to you. It is understandable. It makes sense to you. It is it is clear and testable. And everything else is written there. We will get there, and you will understand. You and also understand that one day you will not understand everything. Gradually, we will teach you everything, and we'll make sure that you're hands-on on each and every one of these things.
Thank you.
You're welcome, brother. I wanted to spend a couple of more minutes here. When do we test? And this is so crucial, right? If you look at this, it says once the code is complete, and it also is saying as during development. Also, it's saying as soon as architecture defined. So these are the sentence kind of if you read through them, right, they can be confusing sometimes, because when you say during development, that's mean developments are happening. At the same time, you're saying once the code is complete. Development is one phase, complete is another phase. Now, how do you do this? So the short answer is we test in each and every phases of the development. We test from day one to the last day, but there are different type of testing. There are different way of testing. And one thing just remember is very, very important. Testing field, software testing field is a process-oriented job. There is a process that is involved when it comes to testing. Testing is not just going in an application and start verifying and looking through it and try to see where the bugs are. Testings are not just like that. Testing is a process-oriented field. And when I said right earlier, when you get a requirement, you start analyzing the requirement. That's a testing itself right there. It may not be testing on the application, but you're testing the requirement. And that's your testing process as well. So this is a tricky one. When you go to interview, they'll ask you, when do you start testing? So, your answer should be all of this. And if they're confused, right, you explain to them what you mean by testing. Testing is a process. It's a process-oriented job and your process starts from day one. Day one, you start analyzing the requirement, understanding the requirement. That's your testing. Now, you don't get actual application to test until the code is complete. When the code is complete, this is when you will do actual testing, actual verification of the software. Hands-on, you will see where the bugs are. But prior to that, you will do so many more things and we'll learn that. And those are nothing but part of your testing process. Right, I hope this is clear. Any other questions, guys? Cool. It's getting late today. I think we spent almost 2 hours. Going forward, we are obviously we're going to be more efficient, and we'll try to stay between an hour to an hour and a half. And today we do not have any homeworks this week. We will not give any homeworks. Next week we'll start. And guys, if you didn't register, please do so. I will repost the registration link. If you do not have any questions, we'll end it here. Sain, do you have anything else to add?
No, brother, that's all.
All right. Last call. Any other questions? All right, so we'll end it here today, and we'll see you all next week, inshallah.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.